Good evening, Vancouver. Welcome back to Canucks After Dark. It is Monday, April 21st. It is the playoffs, and the Canucks are not playing. As always, joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. I'm sure you're not doing great after I said that, but how are you doing otherwise?
Well, a couple of things stand out to me. We were both wearing black, so I don't know if that's intentional, unintentional, or just how we're feeling. As we see a 5-5 crazy Oilers comeback, as we see Dallas and Colorado playing deep into the first overtime, as we see an overtime game earlier with Ovechkin winning, how badly I wish the Canucks were in one of these series, man.
6-5 LA, by the way.
What?
Yeah, they just scored. So hopefully it looks like Phil Deneau just made it. So the Oilers are going to have lost that crazy comeback. So I'm a little distracted. He's wide open in the slot. Can't put him there. He fanned on it and it just fluttered.
Well, I'm distracted by you being distracted.
It's a bad goal. It's a huge snow shower by Fogle. Goalie never saw it. So 6-5 LA.
But it's not done.
Under a minute to go.
Right.
But yeah, unfortunately, we were hoping it would be the Canucks that we'd be watching in a situation like this. Hopefully not coming back after being down 4-1 and still losing, or 4-0 or whatever this game was. But the playoffs have been exciting so far.
They have been, and I think, is it too easy to say, Parker, that the first round is always the most exciting round? Obviously, it's the most number of games. There's 2 or 3 games every night, even though it's a weird schedule this year. Because of Four Nations. And yeah, there's upsets. Everyone is healthy. There's reasons why we always say the first round is so good, but especially like NBA, that's a different story. And NBA, the best 4 teams always make it to the end. You could basically bet on it. But for hockey, I love it. And it harkens back to last season, how excited you and I both were. We were going to games. We were recapping Canucks games. So much. I know we're getting this whole point of our show tonight. So much has changed in a year, but yes, would love to be watching our Canucks right now.
Yeah, I sat down 4:00 yesterday, and I haven't been super invested in just even hockey at all the last couple of weeks, but I sat down and I was like, I have to watch at least the beginning of the Leafs Sens game. And it was a spicy game. And literally I sat down, and the moment the intro started, and it was a great intro that Sportsnet put together for that game. And I was sitting there, I'm like, I just wish this was us.
I know. Beggars can't be choosers. Well, especially when it comes to Canucks fans, I don't think we can ask for 2 good years in a row. So I know we got a lot to talk about. I'm sure you caught either the whole thing or highlights of Jim Rutherford running wild today. Rutherfordomania today.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a good bit of our chat. He definitely put some stuff out there that's got me a little stressed, I would say, for the off season. And there's a lot of reason to be stressed. It's a really difficult couple of months ahead for the Canucks, and really it's a long wait for one, right? We've got 2 months of waiting, and we'll get some news over that 2 months, right? We'll get an update on what Rick Tocchet's going to do we'll talk about what was said today. I think, over the next 2 months, the news we don't hear will be very important, right? We probably won't hear that Besser's been extended, and we probably won't hear maybe that Suter's been extended, or maybe we will, and that, will all have some impact. And that is a 6-5 final, by the way, in LA.
Good to know.
So, it's going to be a stressful 2 months leading up. And then, of course, we get right into that week of mayhem where it's the draft, and then it's free agency. And then there's there's nothing for a month and a bit, and then we're right back into the season. So there's a lot that can go wrong over the next few months.
So let's set the table for all the viewers. Now, we acknowledge, of course, that we did not do a show last Monday. I was at the game. Parker was out of town. So we knew that we were not going to do a show on April 14th. But it doesn't make sense now because some of these games are 2 weeks old. We're not going to recap. Win over Dallas, win over Colorado, lost to Minnesota, win over San Jose, lost to Vegas. There you go. There's our 5-game recap. I think what we want to do is we want to talk about what Rick Tocchet had to say on the weekend, on Friday or Saturday. I can't remember what it was. No, sorry, it went in this order. Yeah, it was on Friday. It was Tocchet, and then all the players, and then of course today, it was it was Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin. So we won't insult your intelligence and go verbatim, repeat everything they said. I think our job, Parker, I hope you agree, is to react to what was said. And of course, we're going to bring up, some quotes, some put things in context for everyone watching out there. But I think that's probably the best use of our time tonight. Would you agree with that?
I think so. And there's a lot that was said. Obviously, there was Rick Tocchet, and of course there's the, Jim Rutherford presser, which every presser seems to be a little bit more unhinged than the last. And we got a lot to talk about. Tom Willander is a big question mark. And obviously the thoughts around upgrading the center position primarily, and what this team is going to look like. Because like we said, there's a lot that needs to get done this offseason. Last offseason didn't really have that vibe, right? Everyone was signed for the most part. Going into the offseason, it was like, hey, you just got to, build around the edges and we'll be okay. Get the lower half of the defense sorted out. This offseason, after, JT Miller leaving, and there's so many high profile positions that need to get filled and or re-signed and or replaced, including the head coach, that best case scenario, they put all these pieces together and we're back where we were last year, or the worst case scenario is the wheels come off. And it's the uncertainty of, how competent is this management group going to be in this scenario, right? Because it's a scenario we haven't seen them in yet. And it's a concerning one because, like I said, a lot can go wrong.
Yes. And I think I was actually, while you're explaining that about how a lot can go wrong and it's just so fascinating, everything we've heard. I actually think it makes more sense if we tackle things topic by topic and draw on what Tocchet said, what the player said, and what Rutherford and Alvin said, as opposed to saying, okay, here's what Tocchet said, here's what the player said, and then here's what, because I think a lot of it did overlap, and I think we can tell a better story that way. So I would love to start with what you led with, is Rick Tocchet's future, if that's cool.
Yeah. And really what we know, as far as I can tell, is that an offer's out there. It's apparently a big offer, I think, is sort of what the rumor is. It sounds like it's a lot. And the other option, of course, is the club option, right? So essentially his contract expires this year, but the club has the option to pick it up for one more year. But if he's not going to sign an extension now, then you're going into a lame duck year and you're paying him for what's likely the last season that he'll be here. So it makes a lot of sense to say, hey, we're either going to extend you now or we're going to let you go. Based on the signs, it feels like it will get done, but where are you at on it?
Yeah. So what was really interesting, Parker, today is I think we'd been hearing up until today, the club's just going to exercise their option, right? Well, I agree that it's better, especially for talking for a multi-year, but at least not force him, but make him stay and don't let him walk. But the very first thing Rutherford said today was it would be unfair, kind of what you just kind of hinted at. It would be unfair to keep him just for that lame duck year. It's either let him go, you're right, or sign him to a multi-year extension. So the very first thing Rutherford said today was they did not exercise their club option, which is actually contrary to what at least I had been hearing. So then you're right. Then it goes to you either extend him or you let him go. Now, despite Laviolette being fired by the Rangers, and then of course Tortorella in Philly, I agree with you. Even the way, and I don't want to overanalyze things, but I guess that's all we're left to do, is the way that Tocchet's been speaking about working with certain players like PD about improving this. Now, maybe he's just really smart with his words and he doesn't say anything. He always speaks as if he's going to be back, even though he doesn't think he will be. But I actually think he will be back. And I just, the nuances, the words, what he's been saying, I agree with you. If I had to bet money on it, I think he is coming back. I really do.
Yeah, it's the vibe that I get for sure. And the thing is, and I've said this before, but I'm uncertain on how I feel about that. Because one fantastic year, Jack Adams winning year, game 7 of round 2, by all metrics, fantastic season last season. This season, obviously the opposite, right? A 19-point drop in the standings. Everything that made him successful last year seemed to fall apart. Was the goaltending a problem in comparison to last year? Slightly from a stability standpoint, but statistically, I don't think it was dramatically worse because Lankinen was a good fill-in. Not a 19-point difference at the very least, right? The big thing was holding leads, and what this team was so good at last year, they were not good at this year. So that brings into question, well, was it a fluke last year, or are we going to be okay moving forward? But then I think about what Quinn Hughes said. And Quinn Hughes said he loves Rick Tocchet. He wants Rick Tocchet to stay. And I think that's what I said 2 weeks ago when we last talked is do whatever Quinn wants, because I think he knows better than anybody. And I think his opinion is more important than anybody's from the perspective of the future of this team. So if he says, I want Rick Tocchet here for the foreseeable future, then so do I, even if the hockey's a little bit more boring.
Right. And this is the beauty about this particular show, Parker, is that's kind of why I said what I said in that instead of compartmentalize every little single soundbite, we're able to synthesize. And I can't wait till we talk about Quinn Hughes and Jim Rutherford in a few minutes. But to Rick Tocchet, I do agree. If Quinn Hughes speaks the world of him, Jim Rutherford today spoke the world of Tocchet. It was, even J-Pat, I'm not sure you caught it today. He on Friday when Rick Tocchet went out there first without Alvin and Rutherford on either side of him, people were already saying, oh, this is strange. And then we find out that Tocchet did all his exit interviews, then bolted to Vegas. Oh, isn't that strange? He negotiated a contract? And then Jeff Patterson even asked Alvin and Rutherford about that today, like the fact that they sent Tocchet out on his own and they wouldn't have any of it. And they kind of then went into this whole song and dance. I mean, not a song and dance in a bad way, just how much they love him and how they think he should be back here. And the fact that they did so well under all the circumstances of this year. One other thing I'll throw in, and then we can wrap this part up if you want, is no surprise that guys like Foote and Gonchar, they are attached to Tocchet. So it's very rare that you see a head coach go and then all the assistants stay. They're like a package, right? Their contracts, their agreements are tied with Tocchet. So because you obviously, if you get a new head coach, you want him to have a say in who he works with. By the way, before we go on, Adam, thank you. Adam gifts 5 memberships. That's awesome. The end of the season is not, dissuading him. So welcome, adequately caffeinated Terry, Irwin, Alex, and Tyler, all here because of Adam. And then Adam makes sure that he himself is also a supporter as well. So thanks, Adam, and thanks to and welcome to everyone. We don't do a lot of perks on the show. Your perk is hearing from us every week or so, but we appreciate you being here for sure.
Yes, thank you, Adam. Yeah, it's an interesting one. And again, I guess, we have the one upside of, when I say it's more boring hockey from a shot perspective and a scoring chances perspective, it is stressful. And I guess that's part of the fun is, not knowing what's going to happen and every game being really tight and being essentially a 1-goal game. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. By the way, it's cool. I'm seeing our YouTube numbers and our X numbers go up like right before my very eyes, because guess what? The Colorado Dallas game is over and the Edmonton LA game is over. I love it.
Who won the Colorado Dallas game?
Dallas won.
Did they?
The shorthanded Dallas Stars. You like that? And by the way, thanks to Irvin, proclaiming his support for the past 2 months. We appreciate you as well.
Colin Blackwell. The thing is, I'm not rooting for either of those teams. I just want 7 games. That's my any series that's not Toronto involved or Edmonton involved. I want to see, or maybe Vegas involved. I want to see go 7. So Kings, sweep them. Minnesota, sweep them. Ottawa, you can't. But 4-1 would be great. Everyone else, let's see 7 games.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we both agree. We think Tocchet is going to be back. We think it's going to be more than a year. Otherwise, why play this game of going year to year? So we'll see. Rutherford did say that he hopes to announce something sometime this week. Should we tackle the massive elephant in the room of Rutherford and Hughes and Rutherford's desire to have all Hughes brothers play here together?
Yeah, I didn't see the clip, but I saw a lot of comments about it.
Okay,
where he's basically saying that Quinn wants to play with his brothers. And that
Correct.
is obviously a bit of a frenzy. On one side, is that tampering? On the other side, is it the opposite of tampering, where it's going to make us, or is he saying that we're going to lose Quinn Hughes in New Jersey, or are they going to try to get the other guys here, which both seem impossible, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, we're not trading Quinn, they're not trading Jack,
Right.
But it was. I'd love to hear your breakdown and your take on it.
So this is weird, Parker, because I'm certain that I heard Jim Rutherford make this joke like a few weeks ago, but I can't remember what show. I can't remember which clip. So anyone else in the chat, if you are with me and you remember Rutherford making this joke, because to me, it was deja vu. It's the second time I've heard him say this, but he basically said that he knows that Quinn desires to play with his brothers. And then the very next sentence he said, he intimated it could be him going somewhere else, or it could mean bringing the Hughes brothers here. And then he kind of caught himself. And then some of the media started giggling, and then he basically turned to Patrick Alvin and said, "Take it from here." And then he kind of said, "I said too much, or this I could get in trouble for tampering." Ha 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 ha. But I thought it was funny. I thought it was pretty funny. But then I'm not the one paying $1 million fine if I get in trouble, right?
It's probably only 50 grand. Yeah, it's a weird. It's weird because it's also like it's so unlikely that any of that's going to happen anytime soon, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're New Jersey and you like to trade Jack Hughes, what would you need to get back? Well, it'd probably have to be Quinn Hughes. Like there's no one else that's worth that price. So it's it's a pipe dream.
Yeah. And the other thing is, some are saying that it kind of did Quinn Hughes a disservice as well. Like I saw Daniel Wagner and others say this. It actually was a double whammy, because not only could you get in trouble for tampering, whether it's a first round pick and or money, whatever. So there's that very real issue. But then could you kind of disengage a little bit Quinn Hughes today by saying that out loud, even though we all knew it, and even Quinn Hughes has hinted, "Oh, it'd be so cool if I could play with my brothers." But to actually put that out there now, knowing that at the end of next year, we can already negotiate an extension. I don't know. There's just some saying in the media saying that was really unnecessary for many, many reasons.
Well, it could also paint him as, oh, his heart's not with the team, right? Is his top priority bringing a cup here, or is his top priority playing with his brothers, right? And I don't think that's the case, but it's poor wording, right? And lately there's been a lot of that seemingly from this management group. There's been not necessarily like egregious moves like there was with the previous management regime, but with the whole, Alvin Besser thing and, a couple of weird Rutherford moments over the last few months. And the guy's what, 76? Like it's fair that there might be some slip ups here and there. It's getting a little bit, it's eroding my trust a little bit. And that's a little bit concerning.
Right. So before we get to Willander stuff, when Jim Rutherford basically, he didn't even talk about injuries once today. He pointed to the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson drama as the biggest reason. And he said it wasn't even contained, Parker, to those two guys. It seeped into the dressing room. He didn't say all the team, but a lot of the team, I think was the words he used, were involved. And then he went on to talk about how much JT Miller, there's only 5 guys, or Patrick Levine, one of them said there's only like 5 guys in the league that have Miller's skill set and passion. Then, of course, this is wrapped up with wanting Pettersson to get stronger, more committed to fitness. And then you think Jake DeBrusk and others on Friday saying that this was unlike any season he's been through. So I want to just point it at you. Is there a chance, Parker, that we actually we almost downplayed how big of an issue this was? I don't know. Like, I know we kind of, it's in the past, but it's not, because it keeps coming up. Maybe it will now because it's truly the end of the season. But to me, it sounded like it was even a bigger issue than I tried to quell or make it out to be. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tricky. Because I can it clearly was this big rift that, separated the locker room a little bit. And I've never been in a professional locker room, right? I've been in, hockey locker rooms growing up, and even in the last few years where some people don't like each other, right? It happens, and it definitely has an impact where you have guys, and in beer league, it's not so much, like getting mad at each other over, whatever they got mad at each other over, but more of some people are a lot more competitive and vocal than others, and it turns people the wrong way, and so on and so forth. And that can cause issues on the ice, of course, right? Because players are playing stressed, and players are, their head's not in it. And maybe that's, part of it here, right? If you have two players, and it's not like it was, it's not like it was Carson Soucy and Derek Forbert going at it, right? Where it's like, just trade them both. Who cares, right? It's really your two of your three best players on this team, to the point where, you seemingly have, people on either side that are split. And there will be some people who say, you made the wrong move moving Miller. You should have traded Pettersson instead, yada, yada. It's all in the past. And maybe it gives a little bit of hope moving forward, but maybe it also gives a little bit of concern moving forward, right? Maybe other free agents look at it and say, well, I don't necessarily, I see Jake DeBrusk say this is the unluckiest season I've ever had, and maybe I don't want to be a part of that next year, right? Maybe I want to go play in LA where the team is, a similar caliber, and, maybe it's a little less stressful.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. So I just want to get your final thoughts on this. And this issue is Rutherford clearly laid out that the JT Miller was the one who asked for the leave of absence. Then JT Miller said, I'm willing to waive my no trade, but he only mentioned the Rangers. So that's the only team that came up today. And then they did their best to make their trade to the Rangers. And then we know the series of trades that led to basically that first round pick becoming Marcus Pettersson, then Nahito, and then other pieces, blah, blah, blah. So it sounds like they tried to do their best for JT Miller, respect his wishes, but Rutherford admitted that changed their status from contender, not to pretender, but to transition. That's the word he used a couple of times today, is transition. So I guess the question is, was it all worth it? But maybe there was no other way.
And that's something we're not going to know for a bit, right? And that's the thing, with Miller on the team, where this team was, 2 weeks before the trade deadline, even though they're sort of hovering around that playoff spot and needed to go on a run, you could have justified making a move to improve the roster, which they did. I mean, with Marcus Pettersson anyways, but it was, they really just sort of flipped things around. But the fact they had to get rid of JT Miller, suddenly, you have a team that's barely hanging on by a thread anyways, and has now gotten worse. Right. So it makes sense, that was the route they had to take. Now, knowing that, maybe it would have been nice to get something in return for Brock Besser, or Hughes Suter, who ended the season with 25 goals, and is likely going to walk away for nothing in free agency or get paid a lot of money. So it's, they can say all the right things, and but the actions only sort of half backed it up, I would say, around the deadline.
Sure. And then one other thing I'll say, Parker, love your input. So Patrick Oveen then was asked, what are you going to do with Pettersson? And they were talking about a number one center. They believe he can be that number one center, but he said, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't listening, exploring options before July 1st, obviously referring to when the no movement clause kicks in. So handicap it for me, 100%. What's your certainty? No, let's put it the other way. What are the chances that PD gets moved before July 1st? I'm going 10 to 15%. Like I'm really low on that.
I was thinking 7%.
I love the accuracy.
It's super unlikely, but it could happen. It would take a haul, right? And the thing is, I don't know if there's a lot of teams necessarily willing to give up that haul at this moment, for that uncertainty, right? And the thing is, there's a lot more if you hang on to him and you don't make that move, and next year is similar performance to this year, his value obviously drops. But you're also not in the position where you traded him and he puts up 108 points next year.
Right.
And it's like there's easy, it's tough because there's easy things to point at as why he didn't play well, but it's also like at some point he needs to start playing well. It's so hard because Rutherford mentioned that there was some sort of injury, and whether that was during the summer and impacting his training, or whether that was during the season. Like fully healthy Pettersson in a good mind state, I think is extremely dangerous. The problem is we don't know if that's how often that's going to come around, if that's going to come around, what that looks like, because it's been a while. So it's tough.
That's such a good point, Parker and Alfred. I love it. 11.6 chance that PD gets moved, reference to his contract. Very good, Alfred. Parker, this one's really interesting to me because he's polarizing, but through no fault of his, well, I guess a bit of the way he plays, but not intentionally polarizing. Like, I think everyone wants to like him and wants to cheer for him because he came in as Calder Trophy winner, came in, him and Hughes are going to be the saviors of this franchise. But you're right. Then tendonitis and excuses, coming in out of shape or not prepared, fighting with Miller, then oblique injury, not his fault. And then all these things. But I haven't heard him. Like, remember when he came back in March and he was actually going a point per game and he was actually having fun with the media and joking around and kind of old PD a little bit. And then he comes back to this player availability on Good Friday. And it was kind of went a little bit regress back to the way he kind of was this season, kind of sullen and kind of, sarcastic, blah, 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 and not very forthcoming. I don't expect him to be all smiles. Like, all these guys are mad that they're not playing, but I don't know. I've always wanted him to do well. I've been maybe a supporter to a fault, but even for me, he's kind of getting on my nerves just a little bit.
Yeah, it's so tough because what he can be, and that's a double-edged sword because right. On one hand, what he can be, and you're frustrated that he's not able to play to that level. But on the other hand, what he can be, and so you're thinking, well, if he can get back to that, which we know he can, it's in him. Like, we know it. We've seen it. We've seen it a few times. We know that's there, and if he gets back to that, then like I said, he's one of the most dangerous players in the game. So it is, of course, frustrating. I can see why, after he finally gets some momentum back and he's playing pretty well and he gets a bit of that swagger back. And that's what we said all year, right? He needs that swagger back. Once he had that going a little bit, and then he gets injured and he misses the rest of the season, and, they don't make the playoffs, obviously, right? I can see how, it kind of sucks because he probably didn't play for a few weeks and he could have just he could have just left town after the last game, had to stick around, yada, yada. Like, I could see where the frustration on his part could stem from, but on the other hand, he needs a fantastic offseason. That's as simple as it is. And it's something that the management group should be privy to, right? They should know there's, what is it, 9 weeks, 10 weeks until free agency? Let's say 9 weeks till the draft. They should have a pretty good idea of how his offseason's going, right? And most guys rest for a bit, to let the body heal. But around that time, he should be in his training cycle, and they should have an idea on what his fitness is going to be, how he's looking, and where things are at, and maybe make a decision at that point. That they don't have to just go on the information that we have. And I'm hoping that they look at him in the off season and he's, training really well. He's getting in really good shape, and they look and say, yep, 3 months from now, this guy's going to be a problem. We're going to keep him. That's what I'm hoping. But if they get to that point and, he's disengaged and these injuries are piling up and he's just not going to be in good shape for the regular season, then we'll see what they do.
Sure. And Sensei, I just want to acknowledge, I'm not sure if you were late to the show. That was actually the very first talking point that Parker and I talked about. We did spend about 3 to 5 minutes talking about Tocchet and how we actually both think he is coming back. But we appreciate you being here. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Parker, you mentioned both players, Brock Besser and Pius Suter. Rutherford said today that the reason why they didn't, so he didn't close the door. I was asking you if you think this is BS or not. They didn't close. He said they didn't close the door on re-signing them. They haven't closed the door on re-signing them, and that's why they did not trade them at the deadline. Now, the cynical part of me says they didn't trade them because they didn't get any offers. And look what they said about Brock. They basically flat out said they didn't get any good offers. So where are you at? Did what he said about, we still hope to resign him, is that all GM speak and president speak and they're as good as gone? Or do you think Suter's 25 goals gives them pause and say maybe he's not our 2C as we talked about 2 weeks ago, but maybe he's our answer at 3C? What do you think?
It's really tough because I look at the numbers that these guys are probably going to get on the open market, and I'm not sure they're worth those numbers. Right now, there's something to be said for something about a bird in a hand, right? If you are Pius Suter and this management group comes and offers you a little bit lower than what you're expecting at free agency, maybe that's just worth taking at that point, right? Because you don't necessarily know. And I think Besser is maybe more of that case where he was thinking he was getting $8 million and he got offered $8 million a year. And I don't think that's a number that's necessarily on the table anymore with how the latter half of his season went and this season as a whole went. Because, you can base a lot off of a fantastic season last year, but it was the outlier at this point. But again, I have those concerns from our side too, right? Are we going to be the guys to overpay them? And then if Pettersson isn't performing, now we have, 3 guys who are heavily overpaid, plus throw in the OEL cap hit. By the way, sweet goal yesterday. Thanks, man. Things can spiral out of control where, I'd much rather overpay players who, I'd much rather overpay a guy like Pettersson where there's a ceiling that's like really valuable over, maybe a Pius Suter where he's super useful all over the lineup, but the odds of him, performing at a $5 million level next year are not super high.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, Parker, I think we can open this up a bit more broadly, is they've said, Rutherford said today what you and I have been saying for the past month, but we're not the only ones saying it. So I'm not trying to make us out to be smarter than we actually are. But he flat out said our goaltending we're comfortable with. Our defense we're comfortable with, notwithstanding Tom Willander, which we'll get to in a second. And he says, we got to work on our forwards. We got to spend all our money, all our energy on our forwards. But he was quick to say that includes the center position, because whether you think it's Petey and Hedl, or you don't think Hedl's a center, or you don't think Hedl's a good 2C, they're not just talking about wingers. They're actually talking about centers, building up the middle again, and then fleshing out the wings. So, and they flat out said they're not going to find the guy that they want in free agency. So it's going to be some sort of trade. So this is why I say we can wrap this all together. And then we're hearing that Tom Willander, likely, or at least as of today, is going to go back to school for his 3rd year, not join the team, unlike 99% of the other college free agents. So there's a lot. Is Willander a trade chip? Blah, blah, blah. So I want to get your take on and you can bring your Willander answer into this. Are you worried about that situation? Could it be a trade chip? And do you think the Canucks need another center? So all those things we can talk about now.
Yeah, this is usually the biggest non-issue, right? You have a guy who you drafted in 2023, so 2 years ago now, going into his 3rd season after being drafted,
right?
And yeah, that's usually a gimme, right? Guy, if they sign their ELC at the end of that college season, especially as a defenseman, they sign their ELC at the end of that college season, locking them in with that team, and then they burn a year and move forward. Now that year didn't get burned. That's already gone and passed, but you can still sign him, start that 3 years next year, have him play in Abbotsford, come up to Vancouver as needed, or try to make the team if he can. However, that doesn't seem to be happening, right? Even from today, Rick Dhaliwal was talking to Todd Diamond, his advisor, because I don't think he can technically be his agent because he's not pro yet. And he said our intent was/is to turn pro, but if we don't agree on a contract, returning to BU and other situations become possible, which is absurd to me because these are contracts that are like they're rubber stamped. They are the same. There's bonuses that have to get worked out, but there's a maximum on them. And if this player is maxing them out, that means he's providing a lot of value for you.
Yeah, he's good.
It's a bonus you're willing to pay because it means he's putting up numbers. Does he get, like, if you look at what the bonus, each bonus is $250K. And if you look at what they are, 10 goals in a season, 25 assists, or 40 points, or being top 4 in ice time in a minimum of 42 games among all defensemen. Top 3 in plus minus in defensemen on your team in 42 games, half a point per game. Top 2 among defensemen in blocked shots, all rookie team, all-star selection, all-star MVP. Each of those is $250K for a maximum of $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
If he gets 2 of those, it's an extra $500K, and he might have just got 25 assists and 40 points for you, right? That seems worth $250K for each of those on an entry-level contract. I don't get it. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
So, okay. So I agree with everything you said. And I love your breakdown of the bonuses. And that's a great point. Yeah. If he hits these, we should be happy. We should be offering to help pay for it, because that means the Canucks are probably doing pretty good. Having said that, are you worried that he's going to pull Adam Fox and not sign here?
I don't know. And if that is the case, then they'll trade him this offseason, right? I think that's pretty clear. And they can use that to try to get a center. But man, like it just doesn't make any sense. Like unless Aquilini is so tight on the purse strings, that doesn't make any sense. We spend the cap almost every year. I just don't get it.
So to be clear, I'm not playing dumb. We're trying to make you say
okay.
You don't get it from the Canucks perspective, or you don't get it from Villander's perspective.
I don't get it from the Canucks perspective.
Right.
Because I don't know if they're trying to reduce the bonuses from whatever the max is. Like this guy was an 11th overall pick. An 11th overall pick gets the max ELC. That's just the way it works in the NHL. Unless they've been absolutely garbage since they were drafted, right? If you drafted a guy who had 100 points in 60 games in the dub, and then the next 2 years he had 25, then maybe you're probably not signing him to an ELC anyways. It's a pre-built contract. It's not like he's coming here asking for, $6 million a year. He's asking for a maximum of 2. If he does really well, it's crazy from the Canucks perspective, because there's no reason for Willander to not sign it, because he said, like, at least according to them, their intent is to turn pro, and they know, they're well aware what the maximum is and what he can get, and it's bizarre that just isn't getting done.
And it's, what else frustrating? I'm just going to take the last 10 first round draft picks that the Canucks had, and I know you know this already. Horvat is an Islander. McCann is a Kraken. Virtanen out of the league. Besser, who knows? Juolevi out of the league. Petey and Hughes. Podkolzin in Edmonton, and the Leckermann and Willander. So even if you proactively and optimistically said Besser is coming back, that's only 5 of your last 10 top 10 picks that are still in first round picks that are still in the organization. So my point is, we didn't have a first round pick in 2020, in 2021, and we probably won't have our 2025 one the way that Rutherford is talking to. So you need these guys to hit. You absolutely need these guys to hit when you have them. And our track record has not been great.
No, but the thing is, I'm sure a lot of teams you could look around and it's probably similar, especially guys who aren't fantastic out of the gate get moved a lot, right? Most guys in the NHL, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but a lot of the guys in the NHL are first round picks, right? It's just the way she goes. So I'm not too worried on that front, but you look at a team like Tampa Bay, right? Where every year they just have a new guy who shows up, right? Whether it was Brandon Hagel or, a bunch of years back, like Braden Point, guys who, and like Anthony Cirelli, and like when Tampa started getting good, it felt like every year they just added a new guy and he would just be impactful. Yanni Gourde is a great example as well. Like every year they just had a new guy come in and he played depth minutes, and the next year he was in their top 6. That's what this team has the potential to do, right? And even without those first round picks, whether you have them or they're not hitting, right? Next year it's hopefully Lekkerimaki, right? And he stepped in a little bit, had a couple flashes this year. Give him a good offseason. Maybe he's an impact player next year and can have that sort of situation. Willander the year following. Elias Pettersson is a piece of that this year as well, right? He could have a similar impact. But of course you need a lot of those guys to come through, and you need your scouting to do well. Sure. But when you have an 11th overall pick, I'm not going to say a slam dunk, because really statistically a pretty similar year to last year. Statistically, but he's a defenseman. But by all accounts, a player that projects to play in the NHL. There should be no reason. Really, the only reason that I could see this being a problem is if he was absolutely fantastic this year and wanted to pull an Adam Fox because of that, because there would be such high demand. But that's not what we saw.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. And I want to now correct myself after hearing how smart you are and looking up. I looked up Tampa Bay for a second, and as Zest is saying, Tampa had a very strong core. The Canucks need to build one first. I agree. So actually, I do look at Tampa Bay's last 10 picks, and you're right. It's only Vasilevsky that's still with them. Duran's gone, DeAngelo's gone, Brett Howden's gone. So maybe that point I made was misplaced. That you're right. You don't have to keep your picks, but these guys drafted like the Sorellis and the Gourds and the points lower in the draft. And we haven't really hit on enough of those either. So it kind of says to, speaks to what Zest is saying about building your core, whether it's a first rounder, second rounder, or deep round, whatever it is. So I think my intent of my point still stands is I don't want to see them mess this Willander thing up. That's my point. And maybe I use the wrong points to illustrate it, but yeah, it's frustrating for sure.
No, and I think it's fair because like the comment from Zest, it's once you build that core, then these guys aren't. You look at these guys as, especially the ones later down the draft, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, okay, that's going to be our guy in 4 or 5 years who steps into the lineup and maybe has a flash or maybe becomes a solid depth piece. Yeah. Whereas right now, I can flip them for an asset that helps me now, right? So when you're Tampa Bay and you've been a contender for 8 to 10 years, then of course your last 10 drafts, you're just those are just trade chips, and you're letting those fly because you get 7 of them a year for free. Problem is, you need to like they said, you need to develop that core, right? And the Canucks aren't that far off, right? Like goaltending tandem, at least for next year, and it sounds like Demko wants to stay. Goaltending set if that comes to pass. On the defensive side, Hughes, Hronek, Pettersson are all signed for some time, right? Mm-hmm. I would say your defensive core is also set. Your top 3 defensemen are all signed long term, and you're going to get guys who maybe come in and hopefully you get a Willander or maybe an Elias Pettersson, and they can push guys back down the lineup. Mm-hmm. Great. If you can figure out the forward core, as in you get Pettersson worked out and you get a 2C, then you can, fill in those pieces with those trade chips as needed, and you can try to get into a Tampa situation where, you go out and make a trade for a second line winger going into the playoffs. Like they're not that far off. They're really 2 pieces off, in my opinion, from being able to do that. The problem is those are 2 expensive pieces, right? And Pettersson getting right? Yes. If Pettersson gets right, you get a 2C and you get a top winger, then your core is pretty much there, right? Because your core is really 5, maybe 6 guys. And I'm going to count the goalies as 1 guy. And then you have Hughes and Hronek. I think they're part of your core. And then Pettersson's a great supplementary piece. Marcus Pettersson, got to clarify. And then if you have Elias Pettersson going right and a top winger or an elite number 2C, someone like maybe a JT Miller, perhaps, or a Bo Horvat, then I think that core is close. The problem is, a 2C is expensive or a top winger is expensive. And that's the hole that needs to get filled. And to do that, you're going to have to trade a first, or you're going to have to trade a Willander, or you're going to have to trade an Elias Pettersson. And that's going to hurt.
Yep. And that's the reality because, we might say, oh, good. The Canucks have $14 million, in cap space, and that doesn't include blah, 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 blah. But I heard a stat that's in the bottom third of cap. There are some teams that have 30 million, 40 million in cap space. I don't know how they did that, but they did.
Well, they're probably terrible, right?
Yeah, true. No, that's fair. But I guess my point is we may have more cap space than we've ever had, but so does like 2/3 of the league. So
caps went up.
Yeah, it's all about comparative, comparables, relative positioning, all that kind of thing. So, and in a quote relatively weaker, why I put the quote so early in a quote weaker draft class. You're right. It's not draft class, free agency class. It's about the trades, and that's why Rutherford said it like a couple times today that he's got to look at willing to trade his way, out of this or whatever. So, I one last thing, and before we go to people, or at least one last thing for me, you mentioned him, Demko. Demko has been very supportive in the way he said that he's supportive of Kevin Lankinen earning and getting his new contract. You're right. He did say that he wants to stay here, what that looks like, but obviously there's risk on both sides. We want to see a healthy Demko, and Demko might change his tune on the Lankinen thing, but really it's about health, isn't it? About doing everything he can this summer in a non-surgery summer.
Yeah, this year's going to be really interesting. Last year that contract, but he's available. Like, he can get an extension, I think, as of July 1, right? Essentially that last year kicks in, he's eligible for that extension. I don't think there's any real chance an extension gets done super early unless Demko's making some concessions, because obviously the team's concerned about health. They've got Lankinen locked up, and I'm looking at, I'm saying, look, we want you to play 55 games next year before we say, okay, we're like willing to shell out some money because we're confident you can remain healthy. So that might result in a discount. Who knows? Having Demko back and reasonably healthy, you have a really good tandem, right? And that's what I'm thinking. Like, if this team can just be like 100-point team, you would get the luxury to 1A, 1B these guys, right? Just play Demko 41, play Lankinen 41, each get pulled a couple times, whatever, 43 games a piece, and ends up being played, let's say.
Yeah.
Like, you do that, that's a great spot to be. It's probably an expensive tandem, but Bobrovsky makes $10 million a year, $9 million a year. So it's probably not that big of a deal anyways, going into this year. It's really interesting, because if he's healthy and he's a Vezina candidate like he was 2 years ago, then suddenly he wants $8 million, right? If he's injured or his play isn't fantastic, maybe you're able to lock him up in the 4s or 5s again. It's really tough to say.
No, all good points. All right. Before we go to the people, from what Tocchet had to say, the players had to say, and Rutherford and Alvin today, is there anything else that is on your mind or you wanted to bring up that stands out to you from what you heard over the past 4 days?
Nope, not really. Go Sens, primarily. That's about it for me.
By the way, where does this deep-seated hate for Toronto come from?
It was ingrained in me as a young child.
Seriously,
since I was 2 years old, I was trained to be a Canucks fan second, and a Leafs hater first. Amazing.
Yeah, I don't share the same hate. I do. I don't know. I do take great joy in seeing not their fan base, whatever. They're fine. Every fan base same, but just them. For some reason, I just take great delight in seeing them lose.
I like watching their players. Like, I like watching Matthews is fun.
Marner's good.
That's how I feel about like McDavid in Edmonton. Don't like Edmonton. It's part of the sport.
Yeah. Who are the
I don't know why I like this team. It hurts every year. It's silly. My life would be a lot better if I didn't. But it's the way it is.
I know you don't like Vegas, just from what you talked about. So you don't like Toronto, Vegas, and Edmonton, right? Those are your 3?
I'd say those are my 3.
Yeah, mine's Calgary for sure. I don't know why, and then who knows after that.
Calgary, okay, 4. Still Chicago and Boston are up there. I don't know. There's a lot of teams I don't like.
Who do you like, honestly, aside from Vancouver, obviously?
Kind of like Montreal. I don't necessarily know why. I think just the Bell Center is cool to me. Yeah, and their environment. I don't really hate the Jets right now. I don't like playing them. But again, their crowd's awesome, and I think that's really what I get behind. So those are 2 good ones.
Yeah, I like Winnipeg. My viewers know I like Winnipeg, Tampa, and Colorado. Not just because they're good, but I've always liked them. So Tampa, Colorado was fun for me 2 years ago. Yeah, for sure. All right, should we go to the people over the last 10 minutes?
Let's do it, folks. Do you got any questions, comments, etc.? Throw them in the chat. We might scroll up and find a couple. Derek does mention Abbotsford Canucks, the good local team. I guess the Whitecaps are good too right now, but
Yeah.
the Abbotsford Canucks game 1 is on Wednesday. So hopefully they can make a run because they're pretty good.
Yeah. Speaking of the Caps, my son Sean Parker is dragging me to this Messi game on Thursday. So,
Oh yeah, is he actually going to play?
who knows? I don't know. Actually, I'm probably the one guy of the 50,000 whatever that doesn't care. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. How concerned, Edmund says, are you about them getting penalized?
I'll just make the beer cost 50 cents more. Whatever. It's not my money until I go to the game and I buy beer. Then it is my money.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive. I actually don't think anything's going to happen. I don't know. I don't know.
Nothing will.
Yeah. Swervin Irvin, he said this earlier before we even started. Talk about JT Coach Killer Miller.
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers are done and Laddie's gone. What did he end up doing there? Did he end up getting, like, I know he had a couple of little hot streaks. Yeah, 35. He was over a point a game.
Yeah.
Nice. Wish you could have done that here. He had 70 points and 72 this year. Wasn't enough. The Rangers were barely above 500.
Yeah, for me, Irvin, obviously Rutherford liked him. I think Tocchet likes him, but I think they were also, as much as you like one player, they're looking for the good of the team. That's what came out to me loud and clear in today's press release press conference for better or for worse. Zest says, who would be your main offseason? Before he skated into a linesman, I like Nick Ehlers, but I don't know he's kind of injury prone.
Yeah, Nick Ehlers is such an interesting one to me because every time I watch him play, I'm like, man, this guy's awesome. But you mentioned it last week, right? Like, statistically,
equal to Besser, same, exactly.
Yeah, he's same as Brock Besser.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough because are we going to pay him $8 million a year, but we're not willing to pay Besser $8 million a year? Again, he's more interesting to watch. I think he's more exciting, but you can probably get Besser for cheaper right now. Yeah, so it's
good point.
Ehlers a weird one. It's so tough because it's not a good free agency class, right? Because the top guy is Marner, and I don't think he even makes it to free agency, right? And maybe he does, but he probably doesn't come here. And then there's such a big drop off, and there's all this new money available, right? It's like every team has so much more money to spend, and these guys to spend it on.
Yep.
And so they are just so primed to get overpaid. And of course, anyone else who's up for renewal, RFAs and stuff, but or guys who already have renewed. But it's just free agency just doesn't feel like it's going to be all that useful for anybody except for filling out depth, which is what it should be used for.
We both have talked about Sam Bennett could possibly get overpaid. You got to watch out for that. I'm a big fan of Ryan. I'm a big fan of Ryan Donato, actually. Only $2 million this year, and he started to play really well in Chicago, but is he much of a needle mover, to be honest with you? Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's like, third line who can move up to second.
Yeah. Zal loves your Kirkland shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
Who's a contender first? Vancouver, Seattle? I got to go Vancouver.
Seattle's just so mushy middle. They're so Canucks of 6 years ago.
If Tocchet comes back, do you think he'll keep the assistant coaches? Yeah, Edmund, I'm not sure if you were here. We were talking about how usually the assistant coaches are attached to the coach, but you're asking if he comes back, I think he'll keep most of them. I think he really likes, I know he loves Adam Foote. I don't know about the skills guy. I don't know enough about him. And he did say though that he doesn't want so many part-time coaches. So I don't know if he was referring to Gonchar. Really, he's the only part-timer I can think of. Is there another one, Edmund? Is there another one, Parker?
I'm not sure.
Answer question. Yeah, but I think
I'm not super tuned into on that front. The thing is, I look at guys like Gonchar and Foote when they were brought in, and I'm like those, and like the Sedins are kicking around. You look at that and like, man, these younger guys have some great people to learn from, right? But I don't know how much that translates into coaching. And it's so tough because what do we have to base any sort of assistant coaching off of, right? We look at, the power play is not doing so great. Probably the power play coach's fault. Well, we don't actually know that, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're allowing, 3.5 goals a game. Who's in charge of the defense? They're probably terrible, right?
Yeah.
It's so, and that's all we have to go on, because we don't hear what goes on in the room, then, and nor should we. So it's, we can look at all these things, and even like head coaching to an extent, right? You can just have guys who aren't playing their best, and is that the head coach's fault, or is he just more in charge of the system and keeping guys engaged? It's so tough to tell from the outside.
Yeah. Irvin, to follow up on his point, he says JT has been in and around 5 coach firings, and he was a member of the 2019 Tampa team that CBJ swept. Okay, I think Irvin's building up a case here. Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Never mind.
Okay. Sensei says, if Edmonton doesn't get past LA, does the team get blown up from the inside? Yeah, getting to the Stanley Cup final and they lose by a goal it's too early to say, but imagine if they lose to LA. Yeah, I don't know. They beat LA the last 3 years though, so it's not like they always lose to LA.
Yeah, and it's been one game, right?
Yeah.
And it's been one game, and they got kind of, run out of the building and then came back.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I look at the Edmonton Oilers, and they're a really good hockey team that just needs a starting goalie.
Yeah.
Like Stuart Skinner, like I remember at the beginning of the year, people were like, "Oh, Stuart Skinner's turning it around." Finished the year with an 896, right? And obviously had a tough night tonight, and has historically not been great in the playoffs. And they brought in Calvin Pickard, and he was at 900. And he's 33. He's not the answer. So I don't think you blow it up, because you look at that team, and any single night, they're a scary hockey team to go against. And that's evidenced by them being, a top team in the standings for the last handful of years. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you get in these series where really 3 goals can end your season, right? You lose a couple games by a goal. Like tonight's a prime example, right? This team scored 5. They can score 5. Their goalie let in 6. He had a bad night. And that 6th goal was frankly really fluky. It's so you look at that, and you're like, well, yeah, a goalie who has a couple bad nights can sink you. Whereas, you have these other teams that have that, or that have the luxury of better goaltending. And I think you look at last year with the Canucks, right? If it's not Shilov's in net, and it's the battle of Demko versus Stuart Skinner, that series might go a different way, just because Demko might steal one and Skinner might have a bad night. So I don't think Edmonton gets blown up. I think they just need to overpay for a goaltender.
All right, let's end with this one, because it's something we've lamented before. How do we go from 2 years ago, Petey, Miller, and Horvat down the middle, to now 0.5 Petey? Come on, we got to put some respect on Hedel and Bluger and Suter. I'm just kidding. I hear what you're saying, Indigo.
I mean, you look at the situation. You have Petey, Miller, and Horvat at center. You just can't do that, right? Because you look at who are you putting at 3C, because they're going to feel ripped off. Or who are you putting on the wing, and then they're still going to feel ripped off. So you had to get rid of one of them. And Horvat was on the absolute heater of his life, and he was going to get overpaid, and he did get overpaid. So he was the obvious trade candidate. And Pettersson was playing well, and Miller was playing well. So I have no qualms looking back at that Horvat trade. Because frankly, without Phil Hronek, who knows what Quinn Hughes is doing right now. And then obviously the whole Miller thing, right? Like it's super unfortunate, but I don't think there's any, it's not a mystery. It's just things, the wheels sort of came off when we didn't want them to.
Sure. And I totally get that this oversimplifies things, Parker, but forgetting about all what happened. Just imagine though, if they had picked Horvat over Miller back then, you could argue we'd still have PD Horvat, although Horvat overpaid, sure, instead of just PD. You see what I mean? And of course, the hindsight's 2020, but yeah, they didn't know that this whole JT Miller thing was going to blow up. But he was good in last year's playoffs. He was amazing, and that's kind of what we were hoping for this year. But it was all for naught. You
can only work with the information you have at the time.
That is very true. Speaking of information, I think Park and I talked about maybe using next week's show to recap our brutal prediction results.
Yeah. We'll do We'll do our preseason predictions from this year next week. So if you put in predictions at the beginning of the year, tune in for that one. It'll be a fun one, and I'm sure we'll have some hockey games to talk about because everything will be around probably game 5 at that point of the first round. And then we'll probably go bi-weekly after that, but we'll figure it out as we get there. So make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell. Next Monday, we will be here. If you've missed any part of the show, you can rewind back to the beginning and rewatch, or you can find it on your favorite podcast platform in a matter of 15 or so minutes. You can listen to it in the car, whatever, in the morning. Clay, any parting words this Monday night?
Yeah, 3 last things. Number 1, no show for me tonight. I got to prepare for work after a long weekend. So no double dip tonight, just here. So thanks to everyone that was here. Number 2, yes, we're looking at going bi-weekly probably for May, June, because there's still playoffs and draft and free agency. And then if it's anything like last summer, we kind of went dark as Canucks After Dark in July, August, but we'll see. And number 3, Parker, just to reiterate what you said, it's really tough that we're not watching Canucks playoff hockey right now. Hopefully it looks like this first round will live up to its billing as a fun first round. So give us some good content, at least for the next couple shows. But who knows what happens after that? You may have to console me if I become a blubbering mess by the end of next week's show.
Fair enough. Hey, I mean, it's golf season. Rory won the Masters. Fired up about that. Mariners are playing okay. It's going to be a long off season. It's 6 months till the Canucks play meaningful hockey again. But we'll try to keep you entertained at least for a part of that off season.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, folks. Thank you all for joining. Have a good Monday night, and we will see you next week.